Hello, I am Curtis Wright, aka NTL.Weaklink, with Semmler here from the Good Studio, all the way from Sweden, and we are here outside in beautiful California, and we have been participating in the Anaheim Spring Championship for MLG all weekend. Semmler, how have you felt about this event?
It's an amazing event. It's always fun to come to MLG. This was one of my first major events that I went to, so coming back a year later, really enjoying myself. I actually just get to relax and watch the games this time, so it's actually pretty nice.
I think we can both enjoy, just being able to watch some great StarCraft. Even though we both know you've had a little bit more of a history in Bloodline Champions. Can you talk about like maybe your history with that game, and then also especially where that name Semmler comes from?
Well, Semmler was actually my name that I came up with. I've had it for a while. It was my character back in WoW, actually. I played a rogue in WoW, and Semmler was actually out of a book called Dogs of War that I read back then, and it was a mercenary. And, rogue, just thinking about a name. I was like, Semmler was cool, so I took Semmler and just kind of stuck with it over the games. Bloodline Champions was actually the game, WoW Arena was the focus back then. For a lot of me, my friends and I, and we just kind of like focused solely on that. And then when BLC came out, we saw a video of it, and we were just like, what the fuck is that game?
Yeah.
And that's all we could think about is playing that game and getting a hold of it, and kind of just played it religiously. That was like the only game that we would play, and I just focused on that wholeheartedly. And eventually just started doing commentary for it, for the Gotkunju League that we put together for the North American scene. We were trying to rival the EU scene at the time, and so we were trying to put together our own tournaments and run our own shit. And so we didn't have a commentator back then, and I kind of just stepped up. It was one of those step up or shut up sort of moments where I used to play in the tournaments and I would listen to the commentary and be like, it's good, but it could be better. And people were just like, well, go and try it. And that's what I did. I fucking loved it. It was a great experience. I really enjoy commentary. And I was kind of surprised just because I wasn't expecting it to be. I was expecting to be dog shit at it, and it was actually a lot of fun. So yeah, that was kind of it. As soon as I did my first tournament, I was just started doing it weekly, and then I did it every day for a while. We had daily tournaments, so I would commentate daily, waking up at 6:30 so I could get out of work 2 hours early to be able to make it home to commentate the EU tournaments or the US scene tournaments. It was just a lot of fucking fun, man. So Bloodline Champions was it. As soon as I got into that game, that was kind of the gateway drug, I guess.
We all have those games. For some of us, it might be StarCraft, as in my case, or I guess Bloodline Champions, which, though, unfortunately for the passion that you have, wasn't as big of a game as maybe some people were hoping it would become. So, but it was definitely helped out by the man James Too Good Harding. And so, do you want to talk about your relationship with him and how you got into the Good Studio?
Yeah, James is awesome, man. James was the esport manager for SLS, Stonelock Studios, which were the Bloodline Champions devs. And so they brought him on because obviously the game was built from the ground up for competition. And so that James was looking for something at the time. They got in touch with him. They brought him on, and that's how he started pushing BLC into the competitive scene, DreamHack in particular. And so when their first DreamHack tournament happened, it was my buddy Cast and I. There were other casters like Tazosaurus. I never give shout outs to Tazosaurus, and I still talk to him regularly. He's a boss. But like Cast and I were like the main commentators, I guess, at the time. We were doing all the tournaments and really enjoying it. And so we decided. Well, it was actually kind of funny because at the time I wasn't taking it serious. I was doing it for fun. Like for me, it was just a fun time, and I wasn't thinking of doing anything past that. And then the opportunity to cast DreamHack came up, where they were just like, hey, Cast is going to be here. We need somebody else. And so the opportunity was there, and yeah, I kind of sold some stuff, got the money together and like bought a ticket over, and I was just like, what, fuck it. And I'm just going to go to see what DreamHack is all about, because I'd never seen DreamHack, but I'd always heard about it. I'd heard talk, and I'd watched streams before, so it was like, okay, we'll just do this. If anything comes of it, awesome. If not, it's still a fucking great time. I'm going to meet all the players, the players that you talk with for months and years in some cases, and you're finally going to be able to put a face to the name. So it's really just all about the experience. And that's where I met James. And the way I met James was actually, we showed up, and it was like 11 at the event, 11 p.m. Yeah. And so we had to set up the booth. We had to set up all the commentary stuff, like all the computers and PCs. We were setting everything up, and it was going great. We finally wrap it up. It's like 3 in the morning, and I run into Trance, and Trance is like, oh, which hotel are you staying at? And we're like, oh, we're staying at the Scandic, whatever. He's like, oh, cool, I'll hook you up with a ride, because he was leaving too at the same time. And so we meet up with Trance. We take off in his car. We show up at the hotel, and James talks to Trance. He's like, oh, you guys are here, awesome. come up to the penthouse and drink with us. So it was like first night at DreamHack. It's like 3:30 in the morning at this time. We go up to DreamHack, and there's Robert Olin, the CEO of DreamHack, and James sitting side by side in the penthouse, just sitting there drinking whiskey at like 4 in the morning in fucking DreamHack. It was like such a surreal experience. So Cass and I sit down, we just start chatting it up, and then just kind of just went from there. I just ended up extending my flight and staying for a week at James's apartment in Hoofda, because at that time he was still working with SLS. So just stayed with them for a week, chilled with the devs, talked with the devs, spent a lot of time there, and then it was kind of just DreamHack Winter rolled around, came back, and went from there. Yeah.
I mean, DreamHack Winter wasn't that was the first time you hosted an event, right? Or
No, I was still doing. I did DreamHack Summer. I did the commentary for that, and DreamHack Winter was the Bloodline Champions tournament again. We did the commentary for that as well.
Okay.
And the Open this year was actually my first time hosting for DreamHack.
Okay, my bad. So with hosting comes a lot of different responsibilities than commentating. Could you maybe talk about like what it's like to be for maybe the more NA scene, a Clutch, but definitely for the EU scene, a Semmler or Too Good, who's sitting up there hosting, and also especially what was it like to give that final interview to the winner, such as you did at Assembly with Polt?
It's a really weird experience. It's a completely different challenge because commentary is actually so much easier in a sense than hosting. Because commentary, you have knowledge of the game and you have the game to talk about, so you always have content there. You're always going to have something to be able to talk about and bounce off of the last match or whatever, and you have your subject. Hosting, however, you kind of just have to hit the ground running, and it was totally different. It was something completely new. Assembly was my first event hosting, and it was really enlightening and interesting experience because I'd never done it before, and it's kind of just like what do you do? So I walk up there and I just start talking, and it went well. I think we need to change up the format, that sort of thing. I was doing too many interviews, and you don't want to interview the players before the match because they're focused, they're in their game mode and all that. So learned lessons. Don't ask what the player's planning to do against his opponent when his opponent is standing right there. That sort of shit.
Somebody read Reddit.
Yeah. No, that was me, man. And I was all like, oh, fucking A, day 9. I did that too at the Red Bull, and I was like, I know how he feels right now because I did that in front of everybody. But hosting is just it's fun. You get in front of the crowd, and it's such an intense feeling. It's such an intense sensation, and I can totally relate with what how Clutch feels when he gets up there on that stage. Is just that you're sitting there and you've got like 3,000 people just like chilling, and they're all eyes are on you, and all of a sudden it's just you just have to kind of get that adrenaline rush and go with it. And so yeah, it's a completely different thing, completely different beast.
I mean, and I guess the question to maybe follow up on that then would be, who was your favorite person to interview at Assembly? And then also, we talked a little earlier before this interview about how interviewing somebody who speaks the same language, or interviewing somebody who's a European who has a very good understanding or almost purely fluent understanding of English, which is nicely the language we share. It's a completely different animal, completely different than interviewing somebody through a translator, such as like a Puma or a Flash, even now that they're coming on the scene, right? So what's that like, trying to communicate through a translator some more difficult questions than just the game went well? And then also, who was your favorite to interview so far?
Well, Stefano was fun because he was French, and I was able to surprise him because he didn't know I spoke French. And so at the end of it, I was just like, oh, bonne chance, he was like, what the fuck? Yeah. And so that was actually pretty fun. But Polt is awesome. I love interviewing Polt. I love talking to Polt. At Assembly, we met up at the after party afterwards, and I was finally able to have like a real conversation with him. But the guy speaks like actual very good English. You just need to slow down for him a little bit. But he speaks fluently almost, so it's really surprising. But he still kind of fucks with you because he asked for the translator. You're just like, oh man, come on. Yeah. But I'd have to say Polt is definitely my favorite. He was a lot of fun, and Hyun at DreamHack as well. TSL is why I love TSL now, is just because Polt is awesome. After interviewing and talking to Hyun at the DreamHack Open, he's an awesome guy too. He was a lot of fun. He was my fuck it moment, but then we did a second interview and it was a lot more fun. Yeah. So he's a cool cat. But yeah, the whole translating thing is actually, it's always easier to talk to somebody when obviously English is your first language or something like that, because obviously you can get your points across, you can get your ideas across, and you can bounce off of their answers. If you're asking questions as a host, they give you an answer, and already you have the foundation for your next question, because you can just bounce off their their subject matter, or their answers, obviously. But like going with an interview with a translator is actually, you kind of just have to stick to cookie cutter, which really sucks in a way, because you don't, like, the Korean players have just as much to say as the foreign players, but they never get to, because you always have to stick to these cookie cutter safe things for them to say. They're also very modest, so it's actually really weird. They're so modest that you don't know if you can play with them a little bit like with the other ones. So it's finding that happy medium between the serious and the exploration of deeper subject matter. Like, you're trying to get them to say, like, oh, this is what I was planning on doing, or what's your strategy, or how do you feel going into this sort of thing, but you want them to go deeper like the European players do. So I don't know if that's just it seems like Smix here is actually doing a really good job of fully translating the questions so that the Koreans feel comfortable, and that's cool, because we've got some good answers out of them recently from the interviews I've seen. So hats off to Smix, and hats off to Clutch, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that sums it up.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this interview, man. It was awesome.
Thanks for the interview.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and it's also a pleasure to maybe learn, a lot of people learn more about you and like where you come from, and maybe now they'll go check out Bloodline Champions and see what that scene's all about. Anyways, I am NTL.Weaklink. With me is Semmler, and this was an interview for VATOCLAN at MLG Anaheim 2012. Have a great day.